Hello everyone, this is Darshan Maharaja welcoming you to the 28th episode of the elevator chat series of our Canadian journey. These are not good times in Canada. The conflict in the Middle East that started with Hamas's terrorist attack on Israel has spilled over, albeit in a less violent manner, into the streets, educational institutions, and the social media sphere in Canada. Sadly, this was predictable. As I have said earlier, our warped model of multiculturalism has morphed into multipoliticalism. Consequently, the political issues, divisions, and battles in faraway lands become a direct cause for political divisions and battles in Canada. And since we have become a hyper-tribalist society, another point that I have emphasized in the past, people automatically line up with their side such that the differences become irreconcilable. There is no common ground on which the two sides can meet, discuss, and arrive at compromises. All that preface was necessary to bring me to the instances of Jew hate that are being reported from various parts of Canada. This is, of course, in response to the violence that erupted in the Middle East. And, of course, the civilians on both sides who are caught up in the middle deserve our sympathy. The problem is that many Canadians don't have much sympathy, if any, for the Israelis. Allow me to point out that some of these Israeli civilians are not Jewish. But my focus here is on the Canadian Jews who are bearing the brunt of the anti-Israel sentiment here in Canada. In fact, this sentiment is so vehement that I am forced to conclude that it is not anti-Israel as much as it is anti-Jew. For example, as CP24 reported, one of the staff at Trillium Health Hospital in Mississauga received anti-Semitic death threat. From Winnipeg, CTV News reported that according to the police, they are investigating a shooting into a home and several incidents of vandalism as hate-motivated crimes. The Nazi symbol, by the way, the correct name for it is Hakenkreuz, not swastika. The latter, swastika, is a millennia-old symbol of peace across many civilizations and religions. So that Nazi symbol has started popping up in many places. This was also foreseeable. What took me by surprise is that in many places, including universities, posters of Israeli children who were kidnapped by Hamas and still remain in captivity are being ripped out by young Canadians. This tells me that we are creating a whole new generation of Jew haters. The way I see it, many people chanting pro-Palestinian slogans and engaging in other actions, ostensibly in support of Palestinians, are doing so not because they care about Palestinians, but because there is now a pretext for them to act out their Jew hatred, which they always harbored in their hearts. The people ranting about Gaza being, quote, the largest open-air prison in the world, end quote, haven't demonstrated in support of the 1 million Uyghur Muslims who are in actual prisons and are being worked as slaves by the CCP. So I conclude that they aren't so much about Muslims' plight per se. Their target is Canadian Jews, which is why demonstrations have taken place in front of a Jewish-owned restaurant and a daycare where most children are Jewish. This brings us to the aspect of leadership, and I mean political leadership. It is their job to calm the waters at this incendiary point. They need to issue statements, including warnings if necessary, to the effect that these kinds of actions will not be tolerated in Canada. Unfortunately, too many of our political leaders, and I use the term leaders loosely here, have built their political careers on the foundation of identity politics, which is a charitable term for pandering to specific groups. I am reminded of the time in 2018 when a girl in Toronto claimed that someone had tried to cut her hijab. The reaction from our so-called leadership was swift. Toronto Mayor John Tory, Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne and Prime Minister Trudeau jumped on it within the hour, admonishing all Canadians about hate. Even our national broadcaster CBC carried the event live where the girl and the people around her made statements. A couple of days later, the girl's claim turned out to be a hoax. And incredibly, Prime Minister Trudeau found it reason enough to hector us Canadians once again about hate. In light of the deafening silence from our leaders in the present, the only reasonable conclusion is that they are A-OK with the demonization and harassment of Canadian Jews. This does not portend a bright future for Canada. It is important to separate the expression of support for Palestinian civilians from the expression of hatred for Jews. Let us not forget, many of the people now targeting Jews in their so-called support for Palestinians were, just a couple of months ago, dead set against some of the same protesters when they were protesting against gender education in schools. Their support now is purely opportunistic. They harbor hate for various groups of people. Who they side with in any given time depends on the circumstances. If they are standing shoulder to shoulder with Muslims now, it is not because they support Muslims, it is because they hate Jews. At least that is my takeaway from observing their actions so far. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Until we meet again, goodbye and be well.